So I'm trying to figure out if I am, which famous people to do, and I'm kind of hemming and hawing about whether I should like talk about myself, because I'm not actually a famous person, but I was watching. I have a friend and I was taking care of his cats, and when he was away, and then I went back to get something, and anyway, I'm waiting for him to drive me home, but he just has to watch RuPaul's Drag Race, and so I'm watching RuPaul's Drag Race, and I've seen it at his house a number of times, because it's just like the show he watches, but I guess, so basically, those bitches have confidence, and in the spirit of having confidence, I'm going to do my own chart. And I'm going to nominate myself famous. So here's my new setup. Hopefully it won't shake so much. I've added a little bit of information to this chart. Right here, here you have like, this looks a lot like the last chart. This line here, that's to say that I'm mostly introverted. So like, this is how much of my time is spent, in introversion versus extroversion. And, like, these are the functions that I'm using. I've added another thing, which is that I put a little F here, or an M here, because when I can observe my parents' personalities, and if I inherited a trait from my father, I put an F next to it. And if I inherited a trait from my mother, I put an M next to it. And when I was growing up, I got along much better with my father overall, and you can sort of see why that might happen, because there's Fs on many of these traits. I inherited my massive introversion from my mother, and my big introvert sensation function from my mother, and everything else I got from my dad. So I'm just trying to illustrate like how powerful and useful this system is. Anyway, with regards to my personality, I'm an introverted intuitive. I'm an INTJ. But my introverted sensation is just about as strong as my introverted intuition. So I have kind of like a double punch here, like I'm a powerhouse in terms of introverted perception. I won't I'll try to I don't know how to go about explaining all these different things. If you're familiar with the functions, then you'll be able to observe things. So I guess I'll just try to point out interesting things. Anyway, so my extroverted judging is, I have really strong extroverted thinking. So I'm like Mr. Spock. I'm really good at logic, extroverted logic at least. My extroverted feeling is the only function that I have which is actually average, which I don't feel any weakness or strength emanating from it. I've always felt like, okay, I can keep up with an extroverted feeling type of thing when they're talking, but I'm bored. Like I'm boring. It's like it's my only boring function, people. So I'm just gonna move on, get to the interesting one, perhaps. So introverted judging. This is my third area. My FI is really strong, so that's very helpful for an INTJ to have your FI be strong. It's not quite as my FI is strong, but not as strong as my 4 really strong functions. And that just means like I have a kind of sense of happiness. Like FI people, they kind of exude a warmth. People who have strong FI, there's just a kind of warmth that emanates from them, and it's not phony at all, and it's not based on, it's just this weird inner warmth. So you can just, I don't know, it's pretty easy for me to detect when somebody has strong FI. Now, I have weak TI. I also have weak extrovert sensation. And I was thinking, well, how do I illustrate this? And the primary way to illustrate this is to look at my chart. Look at the way I'm doing my chart. Look at the sort of shoddiness of how it's assembled. The bad drawing is actually a reflection of weak extroverted sensation. The fact that it's sort of like, you know, I can't really think of how to like draw it, and my drawing skills aren't that good. So that's actually, yeah. I guess I'll go into it. I'll elaborate on these when I get better ideas about them. My weak introverted thinking is like my worst function. Introverted thinking is my worst ability, and it runs in my dad's side of the family to have weak introverted thinking. How do I explain this? I guess it just means it takes me forever, and I don't realize things are happening around me, and it takes me a while to figure out what's going on. I always think of the introverted thinking as a sorting function. Kind of like when you're playing chess, you're sorting the pieces on the board. And if you have really weak introverted thinking, it just means it takes you forever to like sort things out, and you miss distinctions. There's a lot of distinctions that you just don't make when you have weak TI. Now, this is an interesting thing that you'll never get from a Myers-Briggs. I have super strong extroverted intuition. It runs in I got it from my dad, and it doesn't fit into an INTJ's profile at all. Like but when you divide functions up like this, you can start explaining a lot more. In the Jungian types, they used to call these like for an INTJ, the SE would be called the inferior function, and that just messes everything up, because the truth is, according to my system, anything could be an inferior function, so I don't use the word inferior. They only call SE inferior because it's opposed to NI. It's not because your actual SE is inferior, although in my case it actually is. And that is Ecce Zacho. Behold Zach.